When Miles invited me to stay over for the weekend, I didn't hesitate to say yes. It wasn't the first time I'd crashed at his place, but something about this visit felt different. Maybe it was the excitement of getting away from my own house for a couple of days, or maybe it was the fact that I'd be in the same space as someone I'd spent way too much time thinking about, his older brother, Zaire. The Beckett house was the kind of place that felt effortlessly warm and welcoming. Miles's mom, Denise, was the kind of woman who always had food ready and a hug waiting, even if you weren't her own kid. His dad, Harold, was more reserved, a man of few words, but the type to make sure you got home safe. And then there was Zaire. Zaire Beckett was 22, 3 years older than me and Miles, and he carried himself like he knew exactly who he was and what he wanted. He had this quiet confidence, the type that didn't need to be loud to be noticed. Even when he wasn't looking at you, you felt him in the room. Broad shoulders, deep brown skin, and a smirk that always seemed to be hiding something. He was the kind of guy people either admired or envied. I was somewhere in between. It wasn't that we were close. If anything, Zaire treated me like an afterthought, acknowledging me only when necessary, never going out of his way to engage. But that didn't stop me from noticing him. The way his voice dropped low when he was serious, the way his eyes lingered just a second longer than necessary before flicking away. It was stupid, really. A one-sided attraction that I never expected to go anywhere. Miles and I spent most of the afternoon in his room, gaming and talking trash like we always did. It felt normal, comfortable. But beneath that, I couldn't shake the awareness that Zaire was somewhere in the house. It was like knowing a storm was brewing, even if the sky was still clear. And then, as the night set in, things started shifting in ways I never saw coming. Miles and I spent most of the evening the way we always did, hunched over controllers, yelling at the screen as we battled it out in some fighting game neither of us was actually good at. His room was a mess of crumpled snack bags and scattered clothes, but it felt familiar, easy. "Man, you're trash at this," Miles laughed, nudging my shoulder as my character got knocked out for the 3rd time in a row. "Whatever," I muttered, tossing the controller aside. "I let you win." "Yeah, okay, yeah." He rolled his eyes before stretching his arms behind his head. "Want to watch something?" I shrugged. "Sure." We flipped through movies before settling on some action flick with too many explosions. Dinner had been the usual affair. Denise, making sure we ate way more than necessary while Harold nodded along to the conversation, adding the occasional comment. Zaire had been there too, sitting across the table, barely speaking. He acknowledged me once with a quick nod when I first sat down, then went right back to scrolling through his phone, only looking up when Denise scolded him for it. That was Zaire. Always distant, always unreadable. I told myself I didn't care, but the way my stomach tightened every time he moved, every time his deep voice cut through the conversation, said otherwise. Hours passed, and Miles eventually knocked out mid-movie, his head tilted awkwardly against the back of his desk chair. I sighed, rubbing the sleep from my eyes before deciding to head to the bathroom. The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that made everything feel heavier. I stepped into the hallway, the dim glow of the nightlight barely illuminating the space. The bathroom was just past Zaire's room, and as I walked, his door creaked open. I stopped. Zaire stepped out, shirtless, sweatpants hanging low on his hips. His skin was deep and smooth, muscles shifting as he ran a hand over his face. His movements, slow with sleep. I should have kept walking, should have acted normal, but I didn't. He blinked at me, his dark eyes heavy-lidded, unreadable. "You good?" His voice was rough, thick with exhaustion. "Yeah," I said quickly. "Just bathroom." He didn't move, didn't say anything right away. Instead, his gaze lingered for just a beat too long, like he was trying to figure something out. The air between us shifted, charged, uneasy. Then, just as quickly as it happened, he stepped aside, allowing me to pass. "Night," he murmured, his voice softer now. "Night," I echoed, slipping into the bathroom and shutting the door behind me. My heart was racing. I told myself it was nothing, just a late-night run-in, just an awkward moment. But as I stood there, hands gripping the edge of the sink, I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, Zaire had been looking at me the same way I looked at him. The next morning started like any other. Miles waking up late, his mom making breakfast, and his dad already out for the day. I kept my head down during breakfast, still replaying my run-in with Zaire the night before. It was stupid, really. Just a late-night hallway encounter. Nothing worth thinking about. But my body hadn't gotten the memo. "Yo, we gotta head out in a bit," Miles said, shoveling eggs into his mouth. "My mom wants me to help with some charity thing at church. I told her you were staying here since you'd be bored out of your mind." I nodded, trying to play it cool. "How long you gonna be gone?" "Few hours, max." He stretched, yawning. "You'll be good, right?" "Yeah, no problem." I kept my face neutral, but inside my stomach tightened. That meant I'd be alone in the house with Zaire. Miles disappeared soon after, leaving the house eerily quiet. Denise was gone too, and for a while, I just stayed in Miles's room, scrolling through my phone, hoping I wouldn't have to interact with Zaire at all. But eventually, I got bored. I made my way to the kitchen for a drink, only to hear the faint sound of a basketball game playing from the living room. Zaire was sprawled out on the couch, remote in hand, lazily flipping through channels. He glanced up when I walked in, his gaze unreadable as always. "You hiding in there all day?" he asked, his voice low, teasing. I scoffed, grabbing a bottle of water from the fridge. "Nah, just didn't feel like being in your way." Zaire smirked. "You're not in my way." He stretched, his shirt riding up just slightly, exposing a sliver of toned stomach. I swallowed hard, looking away. Instead of leaving, I hovered, leaning against the counter, pretending to be interested in whatever game was on TV. "You watch basketball?" Zaire asked. "Sometimes." He raised an eyebrow. "Sometimes, huh? That means no." I rolled my eyes. "I know enough." "Yeah? Who you got winning tonight?" I hesitated. Lakers?" Zaire let out a low chuckle, shaking his head. "Man, you really don't watch." I shrugged, smirking a little. "Maybe I just like messing with you." His eyes flicked up to mine, something unreadable passing through them. For a second, I thought he was about to call me out on it. But instead, he just patted the empty spot next to him. "Sit down. Let me teach you something so you don't embarrass yourself in public." I hesitated. Being near him, in such close proximity, felt like a bad idea. But I sat down anyway. Zaire leaned in slightly, his arm draping over the back of the couch, close but not touching. Every now and then he'd tap my knee when he made a point, and each time I felt a jolt of something I didn't want to name. "See? Watch how he moves. Dude is quick, but he's always reading the court," Zaire explained, eyes locked on the screen. I nodded, but I wasn't really paying attention to the game. I was paying attention to him, the way his voice dipped lower when he got serious, the way his fingers absent-mindedly brushed against my arm when he gestured, the way he would glance at me out of the corner of his eye, like he was testing something. "You good?" he asked suddenly, smirking. I blinked. "Yeah, why? You keep looking at me like you got something to say." Heat crawled up my neck. "Nah, just thinking." Zaire studied me for a moment before smirking again. "Right." The tension sat between us, unspoken but heavy. I told myself it was nothing. Just him messing with me. But deep down, I wasn't so sure anymore. The sun had already started dipping, below the horizon by the time Miles texted me, letting me know he'd be out a little longer than expected. "Be home in a couple hours." "Don't burn my house down, LOL. I huffed a laugh, setting my phone down. Zaire was still in the living room, lounging in the same spot he'd been in earlier, flipping through channels like he wasn't really watching anything. The air between us felt different now, charged, heavier than before. "You bored yet?" he asked, his voice breaking through the quiet. "A little," I admitted. He smirked. "Good. Play me in 2K. Let's see if you're as bad at basketball games as you are at watching them." I scoffed, but I grabbed the controller anyway. "You talk a lot of shit for someone who's about to lose." Zaire let out a low chuckle, shaking his head as he set up the game. "We'll see about that." The game started, and to no one's surprise, he was better than me. Every time he scored, he'd glance over with that cocky smirk, and every time I failed to block him, He'd make some comment that got under my skin just enough to keep me engaged. I wasn't sure when it started feeling less like a casual game, and more like something else. Maybe it was the way he leaned in when he talked, close enough that I could feel the heat of him. Maybe it was the way his knee bumped against mine, casual but lingering. Or maybe it was just the way he looked at me, like he was seeing something I wasn't sure I was ready to show. Somewhere between the trash talk and the laughter, the conversation shifted. "You ever been with somebody?" Zaire asked, still focused on the screen. I blinked, caught off guard. "Like, in a relationship?" "Yeah." I hesitated. "Not really." He hummed like that answer told him more than I wanted it to. "Not really, huh?" I swallowed, trying to keep my focus on the game. "What about you?" Zaire let out a low chuckle. "I've had my fun." I wasn't sure what that meant, but I didn't ask. The game continued, but I wasn't paying as much attention anymore. My thoughts were tangled, looping around the way he was looking at me now. Lazy, curious, like he was waiting for something. Then, in a flash, he stole the ball from me, scored again, and grinned. "Damn, you're really bad at this." I groaned, shoving his arm playfully. "Shut up." But instead of laughing it off, Zaire shifted. His grin stayed, but something in his expression changed. Something slower, something unreadable. Before I could react, he shoved me back. Not hard, but enough to catch me off guard. "Oh, that's how it is?" I said, pushing him again. Zaire smirked. "What? You gonna do something about it?" It was stupid, just playful messing around. But before I knew it, we were grappling, his hand gripping my wrist, my knee pressing into his thigh as we fought. For control. Then, somehow, he had me pinned, my back against the couch, his body hovering just inches above mine. Everything stilled. His hand was pressed against my chest, not holding me down but not letting go either. His breath was slow, measured, like he was trying to decide something. I could feel my own heart pounding, my pulse loud in my ears. His eyes flicked to my lips. Just for a second. I didn't move. Neither did he. The space between us felt impossibly small, like one wrong move would tip us over the edge of something we couldn't take back. Zaire's fingers twitched against my chest, like he was about to say something. But he didn't. And for the first time, I realized I didn't want him to let go. The silence stretched between us, thick and unmoving. Zaire was still hovering over me, his hand firm against my chest, his knee pressing into the couch beside me. The only sound was the faint buzz of the TV in the background, long forgotten. I should have moved. Should have laughed it off, pushed him away, turned it into another joke. But I didn't. Neither did he. His eyes flickered over my face, slow and unreadable, like he was searching for something. Then, before I could even think to stop him, he moved. A brush of lips, light, testing. My breath caught. My body tensed. He didn't pull away. Zaire's lips lingered, the barest press against mine, waiting, daring me to react. My mind screamed at me to say something, to do something, but I was frozen. Not from fear, not from discomfort, but from something else entirely. I didn't stop him. That was all he needed. He kissed me again, firmer this time, like he was claiming something he wasn't sure he was allowed to have. His fingers curled slightly, against my chest, his breath warm against my lips. Heat rushed through me, sharp and overwhelming. My hands twitched at my sides, unsure of where to go, unsure if I should even be touching him. Then, finally, I moved. I kissed him back. It was slow at first, cautious, like we were both waiting for the other to call it off. But when neither of us did, the tension cracked wide open. Zaire deepened the kiss, pressing closer, and suddenly I was hyper-aware of everything. The way his body felt against mine, the strength in his arms, the slow, almost teasing way he traced his tongue along. My lower lip before pulling away slightly, just to see if I'd follow. I did. A quiet groan rumbled in his throat as his fingers found my jaw, tilting my face up like he wanted me to know exactly how much control he had. And God, I let him have it. For those few heated moments, nothing else. existed. Just the feeling of his lips, the way his breath hitched when I grabbed onto his arm, the press of his body, solid and warm. Then, as quickly as it started, he pulled back. I gasped softly, chest rising and falling too fast. My mind scrambled to make sense of what just happened. But before I could even think of something to say, Zaire exhaled a quiet laugh, shaking his head. "I knew it," he murmured. I blinked at him. Knew what? His smirk softened. But there was something vulnerable beneath it now. Something careful, like he wasn't sure how much to say. He sat back slightly, his hand still resting against my thigh, his fingers absently tracing patterns. "That you wouldn't push me away," he said finally. I swallowed hard. "Zaire, I've been waiting," he admitted, voice low, rough. "For a long time." My stomach twisted. "What are you talking about?" Zaire's eyes flickered over my face, something almost hesitant in them now. "Don't play dumb, man." His fingers tightened against my leg, grounding me. "You really think I haven't noticed? The way you look at me when you think I'm not paying attention?" My breath stilled, my pulse hammered in my ears. I opened my mouth, ready to deny it, to say anything that would make this moment less terrifying, but I couldn't. Because he was right. I had looked. For years, I had stolen glances, kept my feelings buried, convinced myself that it was nothing, that Zaire was just Zaire, my best friend's older brother, untouchable, unreachable. And now, here he was, telling me he'd seen it all along. "I didn't know how to bring it up," he admitted, voice quieter now. "Didn't know if you'd freak out, if you'd hate me for it." That hit me like a gut punch. "Hate you?" I echoed, stunned. "Why the hell would I hate you?" Zaire scoffed, running a hand over his head. "Come on, Cairo. This ain't exactly normal." I swallowed hard, glancing away. He was right. It wasn't normal. This was my best friend's brother. Miles. Guilt clawed at my stomach. What would he think if he found out? Would he be mad? Would he care? Zaire must have seen the hesitation on my face because he sighed, leaning back against the couch, suddenly looking exhausted. "Look, I get it. This is complicated." His lips pressed into a thin line before he continued. "But don't sit here and tell me you didn't want that." I met his gaze, my heart still racing. I could lie. I could tell him this was a mistake, that it didn't mean anything, that we should pretend it never happened. But the truth was, I had wanted it. I still did. I took a shaky breath, my hands still gripping the couch like I needed to hold onto something solid. "I don't know what this means," I admitted. "I don't know what happens next." Zaire studied me for a long moment, then smirked, though this time it wasn't cocky. It was softer, almost amused. "We figure it out," he said simply. And somehow that scared me more than anything else. The moment Miles's car pulled into the driveway, reality hit me like a slap to the face. I was still on the couch, still close enough to Zaire that my skin felt too hot, too aware of what we had just done. I shot up like I'd been burned, running a hand through my hair as panic set in. Miles couldn't know. He couldn't know. Zaire, on the other hand, looked completely unbothered. He stretched lazily, exhaling a deep breath, before slouching back against the couch like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't just kissed me. Like I wasn't sitting, there still reeling from the feel of his lips. "What the hell just happened?" I muttered, mostly to myself. Zaire arched a brow. "You want me to say it out loud?" I shot him a look. "Zaire, Before I could finish, the front door swung open. Miles strolled in, shaking his head. "Man, that was so much longer than it needed to be. I swear my mom finds extra errands just to keep me busy." My throat went dry. I forced a casual nod, hoping my face didn't look as guilty as I felt. "Yeah, sounds rough." Miles didn't seem to notice my nerves. He tossed his keys on the table, glancing between us. "What have y'all been doing?" Zaire, the bastard, smirked. "Nothing much, just hanging out." My stomach twisted. Miles flopped onto the couch next to me, grabbing his controller like he hadn't just walked in on the most complicated moment of my life. Cool. Let's run a game before dinner." I nodded stiffly, gripping the controller, but my mind was miles away. I could feel Zaire's presence beside me, even though he was acting completely normal, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed. I couldn't sleep. Miles had passed out almost instantly, snoring softly on the other side of the room, completely unaware of the storm raging inside me. I kept replaying the night over and over, the way Zaire had kissed me, the way I had kissed him back, the way it had felt right, but also wrong, because this was Miles's brother. I stared at the ceiling, my chest tight. I had two options. Act like it never happened. Avoid Zaire. Move on. 2. Face it. Talk to him. Figure out what the hell this even was. Neither option felt good. I walked into the kitchen, rubbing the sleep from my eyes, only to stop dead in my tracks when I saw him. Zaire was already there, standing by the fridge, pouring himself a glass of orange juice. He looked up when he saw me, his expression unreadable. For a second, neither of us said anything. Then, as he set the juice down, his lips twitched into something almost amused. "You sleep?" I swallowed hard. "Not really." Zaire hummed, leaning against the counter. He looked like he wanted to say something, but Miles suddenly walked in, yawning as he stretched. "Morning," Miles grumbled, heading straight for the fridge. Zaire shot me one last look, just a flicker of something in his dark eyes, before he pushed off the counter and walked away. Like nothing had happened. Like he hadn't turned my entire world upside down. The weekend was coming to an end, and I could feel it with every passing minute. My bag sat half-packed on Miles's bedroom floor, my mind a mess of thoughts I couldn't untangle. Miles had been his usual self, cracking jokes, dragging me into one last game before I left, completely unaware. But Zaire had been different. Not distant, not avoiding me, but watching. Always watching. His eyes would linger just a second too long, his body language unreadable. I told myself I could leave without saying anything. That would be the easiest thing, wouldn't it? Just go home, pretend nothing happened. Pretend my best friend's older brother hadn't kissed me and made my stomach flip in ways I still didn't know how to handle. But when I went downstairs to grab my bag, Zaire was already there, leaning against the doorframe. For a second, neither of us spoke. The air between us was thick, loaded with everything we hadn't said. Then he exhaled. "So that's it? You're just gonna leave without saying anything?" I swallowed hard. "What am I supposed to say?" Zaire scoffed, shaking his head. "I don't know. Maybe whether last night actually meant something, or if it was just some accident you're trying to forget." His voice was steady, but I could hear it. The smallest crack beneath the surface. He was giving me a choice, a way out. I had spent years telling myself Zaire was just a dumb crush, something harmless, something fleeting. But last night proved it wasn't. And now, standing here, watching the way his fingers curled against, his arms like he was bracing for whatever answer I gave him, I realized something. I didn't want a way out. Taking a breath, I stepped closer. "It wasn't an accident," I admitted, voice quieter than I meant it to be. Zaire's jaw tensed. "Then what was it?" I hesitated. Because the truth was, I didn't know. I didn't know what we were, what this was supposed to be, but I wanted to find out. Instead of answering, I reached for his hand. Just a light touch, barely anything at all. But I felt it, the way he exhaled, the way his fingers twitched like he wanted to grab hold but wasn't sure if he should. Finally, he did. His grip tightened, firm and certain, like he had been waiting for this moment. A slow smirk tugged at his lips. "Guess I'll be seeing you around then." I huffed a soft laugh, shaking my head. Guess so. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know what this would mean once I walked out that door. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid to find out. As I stepped outside, the weight of the weekend settled deep in my chest. The cool air felt sharp against my skin, but it did nothing to calm the storm of emotions raging inside me. Miles was talking, cracking some joke about our next hangout, but his words barely registered. My mind was elsewhere, stuck in stolen moments, whispered tension, the way Zaire's touch had felt just before I walked away. I stole one last glance toward the house, my heart thudding harder than it should have. Zaire stood by the window, arms crossed, watching. His expression was unreadable, but there was something in his eyes that sent a shiver through me. I didn't know what this was. Maybe it had been a reckless moment between two people caught up in the heat of something neither of us understood. Or maybe it was something more, something I wasn't ready to name yet. But I knew one thing for sure. This wasn't over. As Miles started the car, I let out a slow breath, my fingers unconsciously grazing the spot on my wrist where Zaire had held me. Yeah, this was far from over.